Good morning, everybody. It's Lee from Andertons here, and another of my highlights every year is, well, actually, what do I meet you? A couple of times a year? Usually once in America and once over here?
Yeah, well, if I'm in the UK, I want to
Yes.
come by here. And I always see you at NAMM.
So, for those of you that haven't met Diane before on YouTube anywhere, or perhaps in person at a Martin clinic, this is Diane Ponzio. And I met Diane probably, I don't know, 10 years ago maybe. Might be more now, I don't know. And we totally hit it off. We love spending time together, talking about stuff, life, guitars, music. More recently, my daughter is a popular topic of conversation. And I've done a few videos with Diane where we've kind of gone, right, here's a new Martin guitar.
Right.
And let's talk about it. And the one interview I've never done and never seen done with you is about you. And I just thought, I'm so interested to know, because you have a really wonderful life and wonderful balance between work and play and all that kind of stuff. And so I just thought, I'm sure Martin will come into this video at some point.
Yes.
You've got the T-shirt and everything, so we know why we're here. But I just really wanted to talk to you. So tell me, Diane, tell me about, where did it all begin for you? Where did you grow up, and how was music part of your life?
Thank you for being interested in me.
Always.
Because that's a really nice compliment to me. When I was Grace's age, because I've seen some photos of Grace, I was performing. That's what I always loved to do. I always loved to sing and perform for family. And I was always in the school plays and always did that thing. Yeah. And when I was 13, I was so enamored of the Beatles that I begged my father to buy me a guitar. And growing up in New York City with basically immigrant Italian family, very large family, I don't think he realized he should have gone to a music store. I think he went to a hardware store to get me this thing, but he didn't know, and he got me what I've always referred to as a GLO. Okay. Guitar-looking object.
Right.
And that's what we all start on, this kind of guitar. Yeah. Nobody begins playing on a Martin guitar or a Fender or a Gibson. We all start on a GLO.
So this is kind of what mid-60s Beatles have just taken America by storm. And the world,
even late 60s, but yes, but they were my passion as songwriters and guitar-centric music, properly written songs that had identifiable verse, chorus, bridge. I just loved the whole thing. Clicked for me.
And was that because I know that that was a huge challenge to a lot of guitar manufacturers at the time, because they'd gone from there's a tiny percentage of the population interested in what we do, so that's how many guitars we'll make. And then Beatles and all the other kind of pop bands of that time go boom, and then everybody goes, I want a guitar.
Exactly.
And all of a sudden
that's
manufacturers are going, how do we make 50 times as many guitars?
And they can't. If they can, the
and
quality
that's why GLOs become the norm.
So then I start writing songs on this. I never took a guitar lesson.
Okay.
And this now becomes something very magical to me. And during this period, I go to the Fame School. Now, the Fame School...
What, the
actual Fame School.
Kids from Fame.
Now, this is a high school, if you haven't seen the movie, it was a high school dedicated, very small, about 300 students, dedicated to teaching people how to perform.
I guess if you're really young, you're probably thinking something like Glee, aren't you? But if you're my age, you'll remember from the
movie.
From like the set. It was a series, wasn't it?
It was a series, but it started with a movie.
Right.
So you had to audition. Thousands of kids would audition because it was free. Yeah. And they would take 100 kids a year. So I auditioned. I got in. And I basically learned how to perform.
So you auditioned with guitar as your main instrument?
No, I auditioned as a drama student.
Oh, okay.
So because musical theater was, to me, a Broadway musical. That was like the epitome.
That was your dream, was it?
Yeah. Well, just performing, full stop. Learning how to take an audience on a ride.
I'm so desperate that hopefully Pete during edit will find a couple of clips from that famed movie. There's a bit I'm sure that they used to go, so he's like, I want to see in blood, sweat and tears. Or there's some bit
I want to
in that
live
movie.
forever.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
fantastic.
okay, then
what are the chords? Can we do it?
Then of course, after 3 years in a then I wanted to go to university.
Yeah.
And that was a magical time because that was the time of Joni Mitchell, Crosby, Stills and Nash, Neil Young. So then that kind of influence started to happen.
I still want to know, did you have the pink woolen leg warmers and the leotard?
No.
You did. That wasn't your thing.
No, bell bottoms.
I thought that was the standard. If you were in the fame thing, you had to.
Yeah, no.
Maybe that was just poetic license. Okay, so Joni Mitchell, and because that's. I'm always interested when I meet women who've become successful, particularly around the guitar, because it's a funny. And it never really used to bother me until I kind of had my own daughter, and then it kind of bothers me more.
Good. I'm glad it bothers you.
That it's such a male-centric.
That wasn't always true, of course. 100 years ago.
Yeah.
100 years ago, the demographic was completely opposite.
Yeah, weird.
And women, that was the whole It was called a parlor guitar because women would be playing these little gut string, teeny things. It was like a Tupperware party in the 1920s, So this is like...
Should bring those back. Not Tupperware parties, but, like guitar parties, I think. That would be might try and see if I can put that together.
Now, here's an interesting turn of events now. So then I get into university.
Yeah.
And I'm now starting to perform in little coffee houses and things on my GLO. And what... University.
Can you remember what make it was? Wasn't like a Sears or something? Was it? You don't know what it was, GLO?
It was an Egmond.
Egmond.
It was a Dutch guitar made in Holland. My father got it at a department store, Egmond. Anyway, this is really, really cool. This part of the story, because what university students did at that time would go to another campus on spring break and be silly. So a group of us went to Berkeley, California for a week. And at that time, you can imagine what it was like, the smell of marijuana wafting through the air, people playing Frisbee on the campus. And so I'm walking with my friends through the campus, and all of a sudden I hear something that sounds like an orchestra. And I turn the corner like a rat with, the Pied Piper, and there's this guy playing a guitar.
Yeah.
And I go up to him and I go, wow, that guitar sounds amazing. He goes, yeah, this is a Martin guitar, I'd never, He goes, do you want to try it? And I was like, yeah, man. So I played an E chord.
Yeah.
And I started to cry.
That's amazing.
Because, Lee, the first time you play something so good, so high quality, and you've been playing, and you didn't realize that you were playing on a piece of doo-doo before, and it was like, wow, and I gave it back to him, got back to New York, and 2 weeks later, friends called me, and they said, you got to come here right away. I go, why? You just have to come, I'm studying. You have to come. So I went to this, it was like a commune kind of thing. And I walked in there, it was in Brooklyn, and there's about 10 of them standing around something, grinning.
Right.
And then all of a sudden they separate. And I could see from the case what it was. And so I started to cry again because I knew what it was. It was a D35.
Yeah.
They had chipped in and bought me.
Oh, you're kidding me.
No, a Martin guitar. They went to a Sam Ash in Brooklyn and said, we don't know anything about, but we need to buy a Martin guitar for our friend. And
that's insane.
I know. I still have that guitar.
I can completely relate to... can I completely relate to it? I'm not sure. I definitely think that nowadays we take for granted the quality of almost every instrument that's made. You know, I mean, there's certainly, apart from the, you know, ludicrously cheap stuff that you find in toy shops now, most stuff is of some form of acceptable kind of standard. But I agree. I mean, I have an acoustic guitar that my dad gave me that he learnt on. That absolutely, the brand is Michigan, and it's clearly some sort
Made
of,
in Michigan?
No. Well, I don't. It was clearly at a time when obviously Gibson were associated with Michigan, and so it's like a rip off of a Gibson, but it's a laminate top,
right?
Kind of, you know.
You still have it.
I still have it, and it hasn't fallen apart or anything.
Right.
But you know, there's no intonation, and it doesn't stay in tune, and the action's pretty terrible and everything. And that would have been probably not what I learned on, what my dad learned on, and probably not dissimilar to what thousands of kids, you know, in that generation sort of learnt to play on.
Exactly.
And I can imagine, you know, the difference between that and you playing your first Martin probably is like a tearful experience.
It was like an epiphany, you know.
Yeah.
So then all of a sudden now, I'm second year university student.
Yeah.
I've got a Martin guitar. I've written songs, and I start performing with my Martin guitar in all these very iconic clubs on Bleecker Street, the Bitter End,
Do you know what
Folk
I think
City.
a good intermission might be here? So we're probably talking around about a similar time to this one.
Correct. So this is the chord I played.
Go on, play the chord.
All
this
right.
is probably what happened. Don't cry.
So I thought, wow. Yeah, you know, wow. Because it's like an orchestra. It's like, wow, you know.
It's a big sound.
And I knew nothing about Martin guitar. And I believed all the myths that I heard. Somebody told me the neck is reinforced with shark bone. You know, I'm like, I didn't know anything.
Isn't it?
You know? And I just thought, this is the best songwriting tool I ever had. So, yeah, and I started getting little ensembles together. My first band was Kungas, cello, and me.
Wicked. What are Kungas?
Called Chalanga. It was either that or Congello.
You mean as in Kong? Is that we just
Kungas,
pronounce it?
yeah.
Okay. So
how do you pronounce it?
Well, I thought you said Kungas.
Yeah.
When we say congas, but I wasn't sure if that was
Congas. You know what I mean.
You know what I mean. And who were your influences at that time?
Well, I think my influences, of course, Beatles for sure, always have been a low hum. Mm-hmm. But then there was, of course, Motown.
Okay.
And then there was Joni.
Yeah.
And then, of course, my favorite band, Steely Dan. So it's a wonderful mix
Steely
of
Dan's
a lot
your favorite band?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, Steely Dan is my favorite band.
They're a crazy
it's
band.
been a nice mixture of things, you know. I think Joni gave license to be authentic in songwriting, you know, to not worry about saying what you really feel.
Yeah. Did you feel, because it's frustrating, did you feel back then that the guitar industry wasn't particularly supportive of women, or did that not even cross your mind? Because it feels like that now, or certainly has done.
First of all, there are very few women in music retail.
Yeah.
And this is an interesting thing. If a woman goes into a music store and she doesn't she's surrounded by men sometimes. You know, I've heard stories with guys, if a attractive woman comes in, they'll say, we need aisle 6. That was like the code. So, you know, silly things like that. That's a concern. The other concern is ergonomically.
Okay.
Is a dreadnought really that comfortable for most women? No.
Yeah.
And there's a story about that I can tell you.
Yeah, sure.
But yes, this is an issue because the guitar became so male-centric. I remember I had a Strat and I had a rock band at certain point during the 80s. And I remember once doing a sound check, and the guy actually came up and started messing with the dials on the guitar. You know, the knobs, the volume and the tone and the toggle switches. I go, what are you doing? He goes, well, you're just the stand-in for the guitar player, right? You know. But this was, you know, I know women who could tell tons of stories, but it's endemic. Well, you look at the musical instrument manufacturers. Are there women involved in making the guitars? Are there women on the board? Or
there is here now, isn't there?
Yes.
I'm trying to remember her name, but I met the new CEO of Jackie,
president. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's important, and I think you're right. It's got to start almost at a roots level. If you know, we need more women working in guitar stores, and I guess in order for that to happen, we need more women applying to work in guitar stores, which is, I mean, that's my problem. Is, you know, we've recruited this year alone probably 16 or 17 new members of sales staff, and
out of that, how many women?
There's one woman got the job. One woman has been employed in our keyboard section, but I didn't even interview a woman. I didn't even have a CV from a woman for a guitar job.
Isn't
so
it?
you know, it's difficult to sort of say, well, it's the music store then that aren't employing them, and you're going, well, if they're not even applying in the first place,
it's the cat chasing his tail. I know.
What do you do? So look, there you go. Look, if you're a lady who plays the guitar and is looking for a career change, apply, please, to your local music store, because that's important.
I know a woman in Auckland actually
it's
who
a bit
works,
of a commute, that one, if you want to come to Guildford every
no,
day.
but when she has found that when people come in and want to talk guitars, and they'll go to her. Or she'll go up to them and go, can I help you? Because, well, I need to talk to somebody about guitars. In other words, where's the guy?
I know. Oh, look, maybe in my lifetime, maybe Grace one day will take over Andertons and change everything. But you never know.
Yes.
Okay, so look, we're back in. You've got this guitar. You're performing.
So I graduate university
Yep.
with a degree cum laude in mathematics.
Wow.
Yes. And I became the smartest waitress in New York City. You know, so yeah, if anybody tells you in New York City they're a performer, just say what restaurant. Because, so I worked in restaurants and did gigs, and this was the typical dream that, you know, you play the gigs, somebody's going to come into the Bitter End or Folk City and see you and give you a contract. It'll be a big fat guy with a cigar.
Yeah.
And, you know, time goes on and that doesn't happen. And then you have to make a decision. Do you stay comfortable or do you...
Yeah.
So and I started playing in the subway, and I sang the national anthem for baseball teams, and I did everything I could. And somebody said to me, Diane, you love the Martin guitar. You write on a Martin guitar. Why don't you write them a letter?
Yeah.
And I said, that's like so stupid. Like, that's like writing a letter to Santa Claus. Dear Santa. She said, I knew you were going to say that. Look, there's two names here. There's a guy named Hugh Bloom, or there's C.F. Martin IV. Now, when I saw C.F. Martin IV, I pictured an old guy.
Yeah.
Do you know? And Hugh Bloom, I pictured a guy, you know, early 30s, cool. And I thought, who should I write to? I'll write to the old man, you know? And I put a photo in, and I sent some of my music, and I wrote a letter to C.F. Martin IV.
Yeah.
Now, I have an apartment still then, the same apartment then, that's about as big as this studio. It's really, you know, the bed comes down from the wall, right?
Yeah.
You can answer the phone, make a cup of tea, and have a shower and not move, you know? So a couple of days after I write this letter, the phone rings. So I pick up the phone, you know, and it goes like, hi, this is Chris. I go, good for you. You know, he goes, no, you wrote me a letter. I said, pal, I didn't write any Chris a letter. He goes, no, you did. You wrote me a letter. C.F. Martin, you know, it's like I only opened my mouth to change feet. I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, are you kidding me? So then he starts talking to me. He says, yeah, you know, I loved your letter because you really love Martin guitars, and I need somebody to do clinics with me, you know. At this time, he was the vice president of marketing. His grandfather was still running the company. And it was during the 80s when people were enamored of DX7s and keyboards. The guitar was really having a hard time.
Yeah.
So he was going out doing these clinics. You know, I didn't even know what a clinic was. I said, does it involve a needle, you know? He says, no, I talk about the guitar and I need somebody to do a few songs. He goes, and I really like your music and you write on a Martin. It's perfect. So I said, wow, that sounds amazing. He goes, yeah. But the only glitch is because we'll be traveling together. I want to meet you and see if I could get along with you because we'll be traveling. I said, yeah. So we drove 2 hours in an old beat-up Buick, and we had lunch together, and we got along great. And we went on the road for a week in Massachusetts during the winter. We drove, you know, he drove from Nazareth. He picked me up in Manhattan. We drove up together. It was really grassroots. And Lee, have you heard him speak?
Yeah.
He is a wonderful speaker.
Yeah.
And I would sit in the front row, just totally entranced by this guy and the story. I had no idea. And I would listen and listen, and then he would say, no evening is complete without music. Diane writes on a Martin guitar, and I would do 4 or 5 songs, and the more I learned about these guitars, the more in love I became with them.
If that isn't a fantastic example of just, you know, take a punt, follow your dreams. Just, you know, write that letter, send that email.
Exact. Leap and the bridge will appear.
Yeah, it's just because if you don't do it, you're just going to live your whole life wondering what might have happened.
Exactly.
So
I think, you know,
amazing.
for anybody out, I know a lot of people who have a dream about playing the guitar and being able to live from their music. The thing I would say is, don't hold one template of success as that paradigm. It's got to be that way, because for that to happen, that fame, that real big fame thing is such a small, minuscule percentage. But you can actually have a dream life, living your dream. You just have to open up the parameters a little and include a lot of different kinds of things.
No, and I we get a lot of staff that start with us who maybe have just graduated from a music college or something like that, and their dream is to make a success of their band or their whatever. And there comes a point where they've worked here for a couple of years or however many, and they go, exactly like you said, I've got 2 choices here. I can stay comfortable and I can carry on doing it on the Friday nights, and, you know, or I can take that leap of faith and go for it, and I can live out of, you know, on baked beans and dossing on people's sofas and I must admit, the guys that go, or guys and girls that go, I'm going to give that a try, have so much admiration.
Yeah.
Just like, because I know from my point of view, I never made that leap. I took the comfort route and just said, you know, and I know thousands of people do take the comfort route, and you know, and I suppose there's that element in the back of your mind of just like, you know, I'll never know, but it's the ones that do, and then of course, you know, and they do it absolutely in the knowing that you know, there's every chance that it's not going to go anywhere, and you know, and that they know that the odds are kind of stacked against them right from there, but they do it anyway.
Yeah.
And it's people like that, I think, that, you know, and it's that determination that they are the lifeblood really of our industry and everything we do, because if people weren't making those sacrifices to try and make the best music that they could, everything would just become boring and nothing. So well done, all you people who do that.
Yes, I think it's really important for you to know and you to know that I am not an employee of Martin Guitar.
Okay.
I am not on the payroll. I have never been on the payroll.
Okay.
What I do for Martin, and it's not, everybody thinks that's my job. I do a few months a year scattered throughout the year. It's never been a job. It's always been a privilege.
Yeah.
It's a privilege to me. I represent 450 people in Nazareth who go in there every day and make these guitars by hand. The Martin guitar changed my life because it gave me the inspiration to become a songwriter.
Yeah.
To me, the ability, the privilege, the chance, the opportunity to go all over the world and talk to people about guitars, nothing makes more sense to me.
Yeah.
In this world where we have hundreds of wars going on at every moment in time, we have buffoons running for presidents. This makes sense.
Yeah.
To talk about a handmade wooden box that vibrates against your body and gives you incredible pleasure. Man, that's where it's at.
Yeah, it's well, we've said this before, haven't we? The music is the great healer and the leveler.
Absolutely.
And it's so. There's something in a human DNA, isn't there? That
absolutely,
music just brings people together, and it could cure a lot of things, couldn't it?
Don't you think 90% of the time that you're playing your D35, it's for you. You're playing it in a room.
Yeah.
And you're drooling on it because it's vibrating against your breastbone. I mean, this is where it's at.
Yeah, no, you're
it's
definitely
not about.
It definitely takes you it should take you to a happy place, I think. But,
it does.
So, I'd love to know. So you're now traveling with Chris Martin. You're seeing the sort of inner workings of the Martin Guitar Company.
So what happened was I started doing these clinic things with him in the States.
Yeah.
Okay. For years, we would do, a couple of weeks scattered throughout the year, traveling together, doing clinics in music stores in America. So I've been to every state in America.
Yeah.
Okay. Then what happened? His grandfather died. He started to become, of course, encumbered with a legacy that required his full attention.
Yeah.
And so his travel schedule began to get smaller. And at the same time, we began to expand our presence globally. So I started to do things with him, of course, in Europe.
Yeah.
And this was really, we did a lot of things in the UK. Of course, I've been up and down and all around this wonderful country and all over Europe. So at some point, his travel schedule became so limited because he was so needed in Nazareth to drive the ship that the company asked me if I'd be willing to do some things without him.
Okay.
And I thought, I can do that. I was very honored. So that's what I've been doing. So I'm at the trade shows because I know everybody now in the international platform. I've been to almost every country that sells Martin guitars. And
presumably that is just every country.
Pretty much. There are some countries that are more, there are some economies that are limited in terms of what they can actually sell.
Yeah.
But in terms of the Western world and the Western guitar, I mean, it is the definitive Western guitar. So it's been amazing. And the rest of the time, besides living a quality life, I'm doing concerts and playing in small rooms and doing this. This is what it's all about.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I'm very jealous. Oh, and I'm not very
You're
jealous.
Not jealous.
I'm not jealous. Because I always kind of think it's all about choices. I could choose to I should write to Chris and say, when can I do Diane's job, please? And but you spend a good chunk of the year in New Zealand now, don't you? And
yes, I've kind of switched base of operations from New York City to New Zealand because New Zealand to me is a country that. The first time I went there was '88 with Chris, and I've been there many, many, many times.
Yeah.
And every time I went there, I was like, man, this place is paradiso. So I finally made the leap 2 years ago to rent my place out in New York City. I'm still in New York a couple of times a year, of course. Family, friends, it's a hell of a commute, Lee. But it's a look. all of us have choices. You said it. You nailed it right there. It's all about choice. And, you know, for me, the name of the game is maybe at the end of the day, making sure you live a life worth living.
Yes, it's, yes, life lesson there. Life lesson, you know, make the choices.
And look, I still love playing the Martin guitar. It still inspires me to write songs.
Can we talk about that?
Yeah.
You know, so you've been involved with Martin now for, oh my goodness me.
Yes.
It's a long time, isn't
31
it? 30-something years. So
31 years. Woohoo!
What did it look like then compared to what it looks like now?
Wow. At that time, of course, I mentioned in the 80s, I met Chris in 85, and that's when I started doing things with him. That was a very challenging time for the acoustic guitar.
Right.
Okay? And
lots of synthesizers, electric
lots
guitar.
of synthesizers. And Chris actually came up with a new... They had maybe 12 guitars in the line, 12 models, and they only did it the traditional way with the traditional woods. And he came up with a new guitar shape that was actually, if you see Pete's guitar here. Is what we call an orchestra model, but the shape of it is a triple O, like a Clapton.
Yep.
So Chris had the idea to, wait a minute, why don't we, because the ergonomics of this is very comfortable, why don't we make a slightly bigger profile, a 4-0, so it goes O, double O, triple O, 4-0, slightly bigger this way, but as deep as a dreadnought.
Okay.
So it's like if Pete's OM and your D35 had a baby.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to see that happening, but what you would come up with is what we call the J, the jumbo, the Martin jumbo. So in 1986, Chris came up with this Martin jumbo, okay? And when I started doing stuff with him, he actually asked me if I'd be willing to try one of them. And of course, I was like, no, my D35, you know. But then I did, and I was like, wow, because it's special. It's not as bassy as a dreadnought.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more, you know, it's more, it has a different kind of a balance. You know, it's, you can hear the bass, but you get more mid-range too. So it's got the panache of an orchestra model with the engine of a, you know, with the engine of a dreadnought. So it's a cool mix. So we were going out there trying to get people enamored of it. It was a hard slog.
Yeah.
And then Eric Clapton did MTV Unplugged.
Boom.
Boom. Eric
Ka-ching,
Clapton.
ka-ching, ka-ching.
Eric Clapton made it cool to play the acoustic guitar again.
Everything changed off the back of that, didn't it?
He really can be credited with giving some...
Well, MTV as well, give them their dues.
Absolutely.
They, you know,
absolutely.
They just, his was just I mean, his is probably still the most famous one, but think of all the other, you remember when Nirvana did the Unplugged as well? And it's like,
Kurt
all of a
Cobain
sudden...
with that big knob on that...
All of a sudden it just became cool for like every single rock band to do versions of their tracks acoustically.
Yes. And I mean, look, if you're a songwriter, you may not necessarily even if the acoustic guitar fell off the planet, you may not necessarily plug into a Marshall stack in your living room to write. You know, the acoustic guitar has always been a proprietary songwriting tool. Yeah. So then things started to change. Okay. Yeah. And then people started to be very interested. Now another thing happened, and that was the proliferation of very cheap guitars
Yep.
made overseas.
Yep.
Okay, overseas meaning Asia.
Yeah.
And this was another challenge. There's one factory probably in China that does almost over 500,000 guitars. Just one factory, 500,000 guitars a year. It took Martin 150 years to get to 500,000. So it's an interesting conundrum because people, you know this better than anybody. People walk into a music store and they see a GLO that looks fancier than even a D35 or an OM28 for a couple of £100. And they think, yeah, it's got a lot of bling and it looks, it looks like a guitar. You can't really play it, doesn't really have any tone. But we have this perception that guitars should be cheap now. And it's dead wrong. Because like if you want to buy your kid a bassoon,
Yeah.
you're looking at a couple of grand,
Well, yeah, I suppose I'm always probably a bit mixed on that one, just because I kind of think that there's a big reason. I mean, there's a big reason why orchestral instruments aren't as mainstream, and because I guess classical music isn't necessarily mainstream. But there's a huge part of why instruments like the French horn and stuff like that are becoming extinct, and it's because when Kiddie goes, I wouldn't mind playing that. Mum and Dad go, it's £2,000 for a you can't play that. So it almost becomes either completely elitist or it becomes extinct. So I'm kind of a fan of. I am a fan of the fact that, parents up and down the country now, when Christmas comes around and they're going, I could buy a games console, or I could buy a pair of trainers, or I could buy a guitar for that kind of, and it'll be okay. I mean, it's not the guitar that you're going to run into a burning house.
I'm not talking about a starter guitar.
Yeah.
Okay? I'm talking about when you've learned how to play.
Yeah.
And people say to me,
oh, I see.
What guitar should I buy? I always say, how many do you want to buy? If you want to start here, then you start to play, then you trade in. By the time you finally get a really well-made guitar, you've bought maybe 10 guitars.
I certainly would buy into that kind of idea of I think most guitar players, more seasoned guitar players, you'll end up going, well, what's your collection? And it will be a smaller collection of higher end guitars rather than, oh yeah, I've kept every single £300 guitar I've ever bought.
But just to put this into context, in terms of my relationship with this particular company, this was the driving force behind the X Series.
Yeah.
To deliver to the marketplace an affordable, great sounding, tonally, great playing Martin guitar, branded Martin guitar, not
something else.
Not something else. Something that if it has that name on it, they're not going to mess with 183 years of legacy.
Yeah.
They're going to make sure the quality is there.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, it's easy for me to say because I'm sitting here with my custom shop Les Paul and my custom shop Strat and my Martin D30, and I've had the cheap guitars and I've been through, and I'm. It is a different. It's not like it was when in the 60s and 70s where the entry level stuff was terrible.
Yes.
The entry level stuff now is fantastically good value and a great way of
I
learning
guess
to
my
play.
point is just that the guitar is the prostitute of this business, in a way.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? You can get something tawdry with red lipstick and high heels, if you want, and it'll do the job, or you can,
I've never heard it described like that before.
But I'm just saying, the reason why I say this is because...
That's simply an analogy. It's not a suggestion to go and...
When I meet people who, I meet a lot of people, I have a very privileged position. I see this industry from three perspectives. From yours as a retailer, from theirs as a manufacturer, and from here as somebody who loves to play, okay? So when I meet people who love to play... And they say, oh yeah, this is a wonderful guitar, but it's a lot of money, and I'm not that good. That first breaks my heart, but also gives me the thing I would say to them is, hey, this is one of the most enjoyable things you'll do in your life. Why not have something so good and have the pleasure of playing it? You know, people who love to play golf, you know what a set of golf clubs cost?
I've had this conversation at least 3 times a month about, you know,
hobbies. What hobbies
Are
cost?
guitars expensive? You know, it's like, no.
Yes.
You know, not even remotely.
Exactly. Compared to other hobbies, we're lucky. They're cheap.
Yeah. I mean, it's I don't want to, people will go, oh, Lee, you've banged on about this before. You know, I get it. For somebody who's, you know, they're at college or they're at university or they're in their first job, and it's like, you know, at the end of every month when their rent or their mortgage and their food and everything's been paid, and maybe they've got a young family or whatever, and they've got $50 left, and that's it. Or maybe they haven't got anything left and they're racking up the credit card bill. I get it.
I do too.
You know, if you want to play the guitar, you want to be taking advantage of some of the value end of the stuff, and that's
absolutely
brilliant. But you know, let's wise up here, as you rightly say. You know, think of all the other things in life. Think about what people spend on their iPhone. You know, guilty, but I'm doing at least £700-800 a year on iPhone bills, and then every 2 years I throw the one away and I go and have to buy another one, and it's like, I guess it's whatever. So
but
relatively speaking,
the other aspect, and this is something I feel very enamored about, is that, you know, these are heirlooms. You know,
well, let's
that,
go back.
How much, you know, whatever that cost you in the 70s,
well, these are
what this is worth now.
Yeah, well, so this is a 1972 Martin D35 that I bought because it's the same age as me.
Okay, so D, because it's a dreadnought shape, the letter stands for that, and 35 because the 35 nomenclature indicates that it's a 3-piece back. And this was the first video we did about this, your birthday guitar, was the first environmentally conscious Martin guitar made.
Yeah. So this isn't Brazilian rosewood. This was, and again, where they started to use the 3 pieces so that they could get more. They could make more guitars out of the same piece, the same amount of wood.
65.
Now I don't know what that would have cost in '72, but right now, if you bought one of these,
£400,
was it? You know, right now you could come and buy a new one of these for about 3,000, something like that. So I guess you work that out. If whoever buys one today owns it for the next 45 years or however old this thing is, it's like not even £100 a year. So
and look, some of them are worth.
Oh yeah, and this is probably
like an orchestra model from the 30s is worth about $100,000.
And I expect this is probably still worth somewhere around about the £3,000 mark. You know, so
exactly.
It's not done me bad really. So yeah, I mean that's you know, are guitars expensive? I absolutely would argue that they aren't forever and ever and ever. Should someone feel bad because they can't afford a £2,000, £3,000 guitar? No.
Exactly.
Don't feel bad. You know, it's not that you can't have a good guitar for a lot less than that. Anyway, so look, let's get back to Diane. Actually, let's tell me about this guitar, because this isn't just like a jumbo, is it?
Okay, so listen to this, because you've been to Frankfurt, the Frankfurt Fair. So I'm sitting with Chris Martin at the Frankfurt Fair. We're at the last day, and the last day is the longest day because you got to pack everything up afterwards. And he says to me, this is 2002. He says to me, you know, we'd like to do a signature model with you. And I was drinking water. I was like, you know. And I said, Chris, come on. Nobody knows who I am. He goes, we don't care about that. We think you'll make such a good design. And we want to honor your contribution. And I said, I'll let you know. I really had to think about it. You know why? Mostly, Lee? Because I know all the distributors of Martin guitar worldwide. I didn't want them to feel like they had to buy one. Right. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So I thought about it for about a month or two, and then I realized I could come up with a really cracking guitar. Yeah. So I called Chris up. He said, yeah, just tell Dick what you want. And so then I said, it's got to be a jumbo because I really love it. 3-piece back. Yeah. Because my first was a D35. Yeah. Nice little ornamentation with the herringbone trim by the wedges. Of course, because it's a J40, it has the hex, it has the Style 45 headstock, gold-plated tuners, ebony, rosewood, spruce. But
it's quite a slim profile neck as well.
yeah, it's a low profile neck. But what I loved about the D35, you see, the internal bracing is a little bit thinner because of the 3-piece back.
Right.
So I thought what I would like to do is turbocharge that. So it's 1/4 inch, it's scalloped, and it's forward shifted. So that's the most you can do to a guitar to drive it. That's the most you can do.
That you may not even pick that up. That was actually quite hard to hear Diane speak over that chord, you know, which gives you a rough idea of kind of how loud
it's still going.
Is.
And then the you know, we never have been known for a sunburst.
Yeah.
But I thought, you know, I spoke to the guys in the factory. I said, I want a burst, but I want it to be mostly black.
Yeah,
I don't want
it's a thick burst.
I want it to be a really nice, sexy burst, you know, and I want to put a black nut there and a black saddle and really, you know. So they did a couple of designs, and I drove to the factory and took a look, and I chose this one. This is a prototype. And we went to the NAMM show, and we showed it around. People loved it, and we sold. It was expensive.
Yeah.
It was.
Was it?
Yeah.
I didn't think we used that word, and you know, it was
more expensive than a J40, so it was a little bit more because of the burst. Because it was like a custom. It was like an early, you know, custom, and the signature is very discreet in there, not on, you know.
You didn't think you said like Diane Ponzio, like Joe Bonamassa does,
like or Gene Autry, or you know. I just thought, you know, this guitar is not about me. This guitar is about the 450 people that made it.
Yeah.
And and we showed it to people, and we sold 101 of them. And it's funny when they started coming out into the shops, because it was a limited edition, so it was just available for 2 months to the trade only.
Yeah.
And when people started to see it, they were like, "I want one of those," but they couldn't have it. You see, but the edition was already closed.
And how old is that guitar now?
2003, 13 years old.
So it's beautiful, isn't it?
Yes, I take care of my guitars.
Yeah. Are you a believer as well that kind of you can feel it sounding better?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely, tootly.
Yeah.
How about yours?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I've only owned this for sort of 5 years or whatever, but and I'm sure looking at the marks on it, that whoever owned it before me played it a lot more than I do.
Yeah.
But the first thing I did when I got it was just go and compare it to a new D35, and you can tell this guitar is 40 years into its journey. You know, it's not. It sounds looser and more open.
Do you know it takes 75 years for the lacquer to cure?
Really?
Yes.
When you say cure, as in?
It means for everything, for all the excess moisture to evaporate over time. That's why they get that nice dark honey color, is because it's oxidizing. And it'll become more and more raw wood. So
what's the future then for you? You know,
for me personally,
yeah. What do
you know, my future is very much the same in my mind as my present. The priority is always be good to who you love, and to be try to be truthful in how you live. A big part of my life is writing songs and playing the guitar. That won't change. People, you know, I know a lot of famous musicians who say or aspiring famous musicians who play every day, you know, and I appreciate that. But I like to cook, I like to play tennis, I love to swim, I like to bike, I like to be with friends, I like to go to the movies, I read a lot of books. I think a full life is very important. I think if you are dedicated to living, that informs your music in a different way. So people are my number one priority. So my future, I think, will hopefully take all that I feel in the present, which is gratitude. Gratitude's a great tool for life.
And I think you come across as having so much energy for doing what you're doing. And it's probably partly because of, you know, that you look after yourself and obviously you enjoy life. So I can see, you know, I'm hoping that we're still here in like 2026 talking about something crazy as well and doing stuff. But well, I hope so. And look, I think we should end because it's a symbolic year for Martin. 2016.
I also want to say that I think the future for Martin Guitar is more daunting.
Okay.
Because what they are going to have to champion is alternative materials.
Right.
Because dwindling natural resources are going to become more and more of a challenge.
Yeah.
And I put my money on them. I'd bet the house on them, because they are already, of course, with the X series and alternative woods, very much interested in keeping the priority of tone, but using alternative materials.
I think the consumer's got a big part to play in that as well, because I remember I remember Ibanez 10 or 15 years ago bringing out a range of electric guitars, solid, but where they went, we haven't made these out of wood, we've made them out of some alternative composite, entirely for environmental reasons.
Right.
And people just went, oh, well, in that case, then I won't even try it. So I think everybody really has got to play their part on that and give it a shot. So if anybody makes anything out of a material that isn't wood, and they're doing it for environmental reasons, you know, good, just reasons, give it a strum.
Yeah.
Because,
I mean, this is what I love about Martin, that tone is their priority. Yeah. So whatever they use, they're going to make sure the tone is there.
I know. So just, but...
yes, the 100th anniversary. This is a big year.
And I thought Martin would have made more of it, to be honest with you. It's almost
they have. They have a fantastic a film that was made by...
Not the 100th year of Martin, by the way.
No.
It's because Martin's way older than that.
And this is the part of the story that very much is synchronistic with the UK.
Okay.
Because C.F. Martin III, Chris's grandfather, his passion was British history. He would stay up, whatever puffs he dress up, but he would stay up at night reading about British history, which I think is, I got to meet him, charming man.
Okay.
So, picture this. In 1916, a company called the Andertons come to Martin and ask them to make a rather large-bodied bassy guitar. So they developed this huge, by now everybody wants just 12 frets. The 14th fret was not a standard until 1929 with the orchestra model. So this big 12 fret slotted headstock, this big monstrous thing for the Andertons. And
so they were a company or a band?
Yes, Charles Ditson of Boston. So
okay.
They made this big hot...
So they were a retailer, like a guitar retailer, and they just wanted... Okay.
Yes, so they make this huge bodied thing. 12 fret, slope-shouldered, and because he loved British history, and because it was the biggest guitar Martin had ever designed, he gave it a name commensurate with his passion. He called it the Dreadnought, because the Dreadnought in 1960, the HMS Dreadnought, did away with the Bismarck, bada boom. Yeah. So now this is the 100th year anniversary of that, and it was called a D1, the original one. And now, later, 15 years later in 31, when the country musicians were playing the orchestra model and needed something bigger, they said, Martin, can you please give us a modern, we need something big and loud, and C.F. Martin III, why don't we take the Ditson, and if you use your imagination and you have that big slope-shouldered 12th fret and you cut it at the 14th, that's where you get the D28.
That's good. I'm glad you said that, because something in my head wasn't. I was sitting there going, I'm sure the Dreadnought is from the 30s. But so I see. So there was like a precursor to that.
Absolutely, the original Dreadnought, 1916.
Yeah. And they picked a good name for it. Can you imagine if they'd have picked, if it had been just a year before, and the Bismarck, that's a big ship, or the Titanic, that's enormous. Let's call it that. It would have been a disaster, wouldn't it?
The Titanic. Oh God, yes.
So.
No, and think about how many companies make Dreadnought copies.
Oh, it's if you think about an iconic electric guitar, everybody thinks about the Fender Strat, don't they? If you think about an iconic acoustic guitar, everybody's just, this is the picture in your mind, isn't it?
And the beauty of it is that guitar. This guitar is not a copy of anything.
Yes.
That you can get the original from the original manufacturer. Yeah. I still think that's a hubba.
Yeah. Well, I've always been a sucker for kind of, when I'm shopping for guitars, I'm probably 85% what's it doing for me in here, and like 15% what's it kind of doing for me in here. And so anything that's got some history and heritage, and it's the stuff that I want to kind of be into.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good note, isn't it? To sort of,
Hey, listen, don't stop dreaming out there.
That's the message, isn't it? Yeah. So thank you so much again for sharing some time with us.
I love hanging out with you.
It's very kind of you to say. Well, look, I will put some links below to how you can find out a bit more about Diane, both personally and also for, Diane's still doing clinics and stuff for mine. And if you live in a town and you see that Diane's at your local music store, go and meet her, because it's one of those, it's like a bucket list thing. Met Diane Ponzio. Tick. It's good. So yeah, thanks so much for coming in again.
Thank you, Lee.
I will see you soon, because I'll be out in January, so I'll see you in
we'll
January.
do our tour.
For sure.
Woo-hoo!
So tune into that. Thanks for watching, guys.
See ya.
Take it easy. Bye.
Ciao. Pete.
Yes.
This is so great that I finally get to play with you after knowing you all these years. And here's the cool thing. You know how people write songs, sometimes they do music first, sometimes they do words first? And, I take it any way I can get it. But this song really was given to me by this guitar. So I was hanging out one night. I was alone on the road. You know what that's like.
Oh, yeah.
And I just started playing these chords. Sometimes my heart starts to feel heavy. When can I lay myself down? Dying to rest in the arms that will love me best. Shine in my eyes tonight. Be my lighthouse, be my beacon. Guide me safely through the rocks. I want to so many nights on the deep ocean, dreaming of houses and trees, hungry to know the direction I need to go. Out on the water tonight. Be my lighthouse, be my beacon. Guide me safely through the rocks. I want to come. I want to come. I want to come ashore. Be strong.